Crazy big news, everybody. There's been some massive buys of Bitcoin recently. I know Bitcoin's price is down. That just means it's on sale. And you can see here, this tab that I brought up, I bought $200, twice as much as I normally buy this week. 149,000 sats have been taken off the market, put into cold storage, and you can see people are buying massive amounts. Oh yeah, and this guy over here bought 8,178 Bitcoin as well. Just, whatever. And for the early comers to the show, I'm going to just do a little bit of some sharing, some free sats with you guys as well. This is courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And the first person to scan this QR code that's about to pop up on the screen here will win some free Satoshis. And we're going to do two tosses at the beginning of the show, 545 Satoshis for the first person to scan this. Two at the beginning, two at the end. This is an hour-long show that I do every single week. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Zapstream, on Noster. And yeah, we'll get into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin's recent price action, why it's kind of a blessing. Of course, some people are not going to feel that way. I'm going to talk about net worth versus income. And I'm going to answer whatever questions you guys might have in the chats as well. 618 sats to the first person to scan this QR code, and we'll get into it. So Bitcoin is currently on sale. Bitcoin's on sale. It's under $100,000. It has spent a lot of time above 100,000 at this point now, and it's dipped below. And a lot of the people are talking about liquidity issues, the government shutdown, the effects of this, assets getting priced higher, and essentially some cracks forming in the sectors that need rapid fiat debasement and liquidity. And the cracks that are happening affecting the most liquid asset in the world, which is Bitcoin. Not necessarily the most liquid in depth, but also if you're considering how much it trades and the global access to it. If you combine all of those things, it could be argued that it is the most liquid market in the world. So maybe all of that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's OGs. Maybe it's swing traders. Basically, what is happening, though, is more sellers than buyers, right? Which is dropping the price from its high of 125,000 to below 100,000. And this is, in my eyes, a buying opportunity. Now, let's take a look at something that I've talked about a couple times. I actually did a video on it, and we've talked about it on Maple Bitcoin as well. This is the Fear and Greed Index. We are now in extreme fear. We're at 17. This was just above last time I talked about it. And you can see here, the last time we were in extreme fear was really not that long ago. It was in April 8th. And, or was it? Yeah, April. Yeah. And the price was 78, basically 78,000 by the looks of it. And you can see we rallied up from there to a high of 110 before consolidating sideways, and then a high here of 125, which is this one here. And you can actually see we never actually hit extreme greed on this index, but we did hit extreme fear. So even if we think about this kind of neutral band here for the fear and greed, this yellow, all this yellow, you can see that's the majority of where Bitcoin is lying right there. Even if this extreme fear eventually subsides, which it will, right? We're not going to just be an endless extreme fear of Bitcoin or even fear. There's sort of this magnet towards neutral. What will Bitcoin's price do if it just goes back to neutral? It will likely climb higher to break itself out of these fear bands and then consolidate sideways, and then probably have a spike up into greed and so on. This is my assumptions, and this is what I'm thinking. And basically, what I'm seeing here is anytime we're in fear, anytime we're in extreme fear, as this doesn't go back that far, granted, this only goes to 2023. This specific fear and greed index that was built and put onto CoinMarketCap, which is my preferred one since it overlaps Bitcoin's price underneath it, which I find very useful. This doesn't have as much historical data as I'd like, but it shows that anytime we're in extreme fear has been a great buying opportunity. Anytime we are in fear has been a great buying opportunity. Basically, there is no time where it is a bad time to buy Bitcoin. It is always dependent on your price or on your time horizon. There are better times to buy, worse times to buy, and so on. Right now, I would think we're going to look back and think this is an unbelievable time to have bought Bitcoin. The fact that it's under 100,000 and we've been trading so often above 100,000, and we have this sort of magnetic effect of wanting to go back to neutral on the fear and greed index. We'll see. However, price predictions into the future are always, especially short term, you end up looking like a fool because prices just, like it could easily trade sideways here, right? Like it's only been in this 90,000 range for a few days, right? So it's not just going to skyrocket back up to 120, right? Like, I mean, that is on the list of possibilities, but it's a pretty low probability for that to happen. Most likely it's going to condense in this range for a while before it makes a move up or down. So that's probably what's going to happen. So me saying that now is a good time to buy is I'm going to look stupid for a couple weeks if we just trade sideways and down for a little while, because there will be better opportunities within there. It's unlikely, but not out of the realm of possibilities, considering everything has as I said, sort of a possibility to it. That it could correct to the downside too, and then even more so, it would be a better buying opportunity. To me, that's less likely than going back up to where we were before. All right, so I'm going to take some questions now from the chat. We'll bring these up. We got Pipeline Podcast, who actually booked a session with me, wanting to talk about this exact question. So maybe we'll get into that a little bit more in our private call, but I will address this as well. This is my coaching website here, guys. pathtobitcoin.xyz. I offer one-on-one coaching sessions. And I also have a brand new blog on here as well, where I have written a few blogs and will continue to do so. So check that out. There's also resources here explaining exchanges and really some Bitcoin basics with a bunch of discount codes as well for everything. But yeah, you can book a session with me if that's something you want to do, just like Pipeline Podcast has. So let's address your question publicly here, and we'll get a lot more into it, as I said, in our private session. Hey Forrest, is Lava a safe Bitcoin lending platform? Because I called and verified that they are no longer using DLCs or discrete log contracts, and it's full custodial lending like Ledin. This is all going to be on a big scale of relating trust to safety with custodial lending platforms. The fact that they don't use DLCs doesn't make them safer than they were when they were using DLCs. They said publicly that there were issues trying to do that. However, there is also lending platforms, peer-to-peer lending platforms like Firefish and HODL HODL that actually use an escrow 2 out of 3 multisig, where the lender holds a key, the borrower holds a key, the platform holds a key, and when agreements are met, 2 of those parties will agree and sign the transaction and end the escrow agreement that can happen. The fact that they're not using discrete log contracts anymore does not make them as safe as Ledin, because they broke the trust of their users. They did an update of their platform that essentially changed how the Bitcoin was being held, and it wasn't transparent that that was the case. So all of a sudden, the user's funds are being held in a single sig wallet, as far as on-chain sleuths have discovered, um, which is bad practice for something that needs to be so secure. And it's terrible practice that they did this without being incredibly transparent about it. So trust is incredibly important in a custodial lending product, because that is what you're relying on. It's you trust minimize when you don't open yourself up to a custodial lending product, when you are in self custody of your Bitcoin. Um, Trust is the main value factor, and it's possible that you're going to pay higher interest rates for higher amounts of trust. So Ledin charges like 12.5%, something like that. Lava is basically, with all the fees included, which are also not that transparent, is about 9 or 10% or something like that. And the fact that they can charge less, again, brings into question, how is that possible? Because it's dependent on their lending partners, and their lending partners are somehow okay with earning less interest using Lava than they are with Ledin or with Strike. How is that possible? Who is losing out as a lender by using a less trustworthy platform like Lava? And they're just, you start to make these small connections, and you start to realize there are some things that don't make sense. And the last thing you want to do is hand over your Bitcoin to a platform that doesn't make sense compared to other platforms, right? When people were handing over their Bitcoin and crypto to BlockFi, and BlockFi was giving them 10% interest rate just for holding it in an account, and you could access it anytime. That doesn't make sense, right? Because they're rehypothecating it, they're giving it over to hedge funds, Three Arrows Capital, and they're rehypothecating and losing it on massive leveraged crypto bets, right? These things, the last thing you want to do is involve yourself in a situation where you no longer have the keys to your Bitcoin and things are not adding up. And with Lava, there are a lot of things not adding up. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. Currency. I don't get why sentiment is so bearish when everything macro-wise points towards more liquidity being pumped into the markets. But there's a lag effect to it. There's a lag effect to it. And I think, there's been a slight reversal in markets in general besides Bitcoin. And I think, again, it's sort of like people are still using Bitcoin as sort of this speculative bet. They're using it as, again, the ability for the globe to tap into liquidity easily. It's a very saleable good. And they're thinking it's less of a store of value function than these other assets, or less of a safe haven asset, not store of value, but safe haven asset. So there'll be a lag effect, and these things are sort of holding more steady in this uncertain, is liquidity coming back in? Is it not? What's happening here? This sort of uncertainty is bad for markets, right? So as we see what we all know will happen, which is more liquidity flooding into the market, once that's actually seen in the market, Bitcoin's going to go up way faster than other things. Kevin Opar just bought some spot Bitcoin, MSTR, and ETF calls. Nice. Spot Bitcoin. That's my favorite thing that you have there, in my opinion. The other things should be good too. As I said sort of humorously in the beginning of the show, MSTR had a massive Bitcoin buy, 8,000 plus Bitcoin bought with the IPO issuance of STRE and $140 million of STRC as well. So STRC is working quite well. There's been a drop in the price, a depeg from the $100, largely market driven, right? And after it pays its dividend, there's going to be this sort of price reflection of the dividend value being taken out of the share price, and then it's going to have to climb back up. So we'll likely see that there's going to be this case, I think, where STRC is sort of going to work for half of the month. Until it becomes even more stable. People see price go down and lose their minds. Exactly. Yeah. And it's sort of this balance between what your net worth is versus what your income is. And again, I talked about this on Friday on Maple Bitcoin, but this is the case, right? Where people are, their net worth is more important to them than their income. I just bought, again, let's see, let's take a look at pleb tools here. Let's take a look at the treasury. I'll just present this. I bought $200, kind of trying to signal to the plebs out there that Bitcoin's on sale, and I'm doubling my buy here. And the reason for that is because I'm getting a lot more sats. You can see this is Bitcoin's price. These are my buys. And this buy right here basically got me 74, 75. Basically 74,000 sats per $100. Whereas my previous buys are all below 70,000. If you can see that, maybe I'll zoom in, 65, 61, 66, right? So I'm getting less sats for my dollars. So this is just plain and simple. If your income is actually going up as Bitcoin goes down, if you denominate your income in Bitcoin. Now, less people are thinking that that's less important, but it really depends on your time horizon. If you're retired and your entire net worth is in Bitcoin, then yeah, Bitcoin's price going up is more impactful to you. But in the long run, Bitcoin's price going down and you being able to buy more of it is more impactful for you in the long run, because this number right here, these numbers right here for the amount, right? The price, the exchange rate in Bitcoin is what matters. And guys, that's a lot of, this is the prophecy come true, right? This is not even just 3 4s, but this is 4 4s, right? So 444 Bitcoin is possible. It's just not the way that the high net worth in Bitcoin want it. It is the Canadian price. Anyway, your income in Bitcoin goes up, and when Bitcoin's price goes down, so you should rejoice. Your net worth goes up when Bitcoin's price goes up, so you should rejoice. And of course, these things are. It takes some time to begin wrapping your mind around it, but it is the truth, and it will become more and more apparent as you look back on it, especially if you're early here. All right, we're on Zapstream. We actually got 888 sats from Solar Satoshi, and they said, let's go with the rocket ship. I appreciate that. You guys can actually zap the stream on Noster, on Zapstream. You can watch it there. And if you want to donate to the show as well, you can do so by scanning this QR code and sending some Bitcoin over the Lightning Network. You can attach a message to it, and I'll read it. And we'll continue on here. Can you give us your take on Zcash, please? Thanks. Zcash is a scam, my friend. Stack sats. Zcash is a scam. I appreciate the regular viewers to the show, Nick and Currency here, understanding that Zcash is 100% a scam. Now, the tech can be disputed. People can dispute me on the fact, oh, well, there's something here. There's the ability to shield it. There's the ability for on-chain privacy, all of this. That's not what I'm talking about being a scam, right? What I'm talking about it being scam is if you look at the accounts pumping it, you look at the people behind this really orchestrated pump, you will understand that priced in Bitcoin, their bags are deeply, deeply underwater. They thought when they were buying in early to this, when they were getting huge amounts of it, sort of on the DL with their VC friends. This is like, it's basically like a pre-mine to some degree with all of these coins. They thought, okay, well, it's limited in supply. It has these other it's basically just a fork of Bitcoin with an additional privacy layer built onto it. This will outperform Bitcoin. I'll be able to get more Bitcoin, right? That's the main underlying scam of all crypto, is this thing will get me more Bitcoin in some time period. So I'll be able to sell this for more Bitcoin than I bought it for. So if you reframe that again, it's actually the goal of all these cryptos is to steal Bitcoin from people, right? Because Bitcoin is actually the true innovation in the space. It actually has the protocol dominance that matters for a monetary network. No one is adopting Zcash in size where it can actually handle the liquidity that would need to be added into it for it to be a monetary network. And it's competing for money, right? It's competing for store of value. These other crypto coins, a lot of them will have an affinity scam connection or a piggybacking scam connection to Bitcoin, since they're all crypto, but they're not actually competing for sound money and the monetary network, right? They've had to pivot and compete for things that Bitcoin is not trying to compete on, like smart contract capability and DeFi and NFTs and the other one, meme coins and things like that, right? So they're all competing in this other sector. And every once in a while, there's a crypto that tries to compete against Bitcoin, and it's not really trying to compete against Bitcoin. I think that's another thing here that's a little bit of nuance. It's pretending to try to compete against Bitcoin. And the reason I say that is because it gets attention, and the attention drives the price. And it's only competing against Bitcoin in a marketing sense, because it's a marketing game. And once the marketing dries up, the price will reflect that. So it's entirely built on hype. And that hype is entirely artificially generated by people that need to offload their bags and sell this coin to somebody for maybe more than they bought it for, or maybe just higher than it was, right? They just want to offload it. They're deep underwater on these bags potentially, and they want to at least get something out of it. And that something is more Bitcoin, right? So all roads lead to Bitcoin. And that's the thing about crypto that people don't understand, is that 90% of people in crypto are all thinking about this will lead to more Bitcoin in the end. And what that means is that all ends up being demand, buy side demand for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is 60% of the crypto market, which means 40% of the market exists and will eventually drive more wealth into Bitcoin, right? That's what this protocol dominance of Bitcoin is that all the buying pressure eventually, and it's sort of periodically, and there's these times of a little bit coming out of it, but then going into it and building up the net worth, and then or the market cap, and then redistributing into Bitcoin again. It continues to get redistributed into Bitcoin's market cap and into the network of Bitcoin. Zcash is a distraction, and they perfectly, it's the perfect orchestrated distraction right now, because as AI becomes more efficient, as people like Peter Thiel, as companies like Palantir become popular, as the surveillance state, which has existed for quite some time now and has been incredibly prolific, as it enters into mainstream consciousness again, right? The Snowden leaks, WikiLeaks, things like this brought that to the mainstream attention, and it's sort of reintroduced now. And there's this perceived notion of needing private money on the base layer of, and that being valuable in this world that we now exist in. That's sort of the perfect storm for these privacy coins, right? And I'm not saying privacy does not have a use case. What I'm saying is a monetary network with a digital monetary network does not have the ability to compete when there's such a dominant monetary network with the digital currency and digital money like Bitcoin. And that privacy is important, and but it's not the absolute main importance, right? You actually need that transparent ledger to stop the unfairness of money. And that's what Bitcoin brought, right? Privacy needs to be a sort of a secondary thought after that. And whether that gets implemented on chain with Bitcoin or the existing already layer 2 solutions for this are equivalent or better than what Zcash or Monero already have. You know, people will complain about eCash being centralized and having small anonymity set. This is true for other privacy coins already anyway. So whether that's the final solution or not, I don't know for privacy, but it's a possible solution. There is some additional privacy features going into Lightning since it's an encrypted network that uses sort of onion-like routing systems. Yeah, the degree of when you don't know these things about Bitcoin and layer 2s and such, you might think, oh, well, okay, well, Bitcoin's just a store of value, like it's being co-opted by BlackRock and MSTR is buying 8,000 of it. There's this niche for a privacy coin, right? It makes just sense when you don't look deeper into it, and you understand as well that you should really not be trusting the people that are pumping Zcash right now. You should really be careful of who it is. It's like people like that Barry guy. It's tons of VCs. It's Ansem. It's these people that really should not be trusted. And I'm actually working on, so I've shown my Pleb Tools website today. My main idea that I have now that is very hard to pull off, I'm needing to orchestrate account systems and Zap function and all these kind of things before it actually takes off. But I have this idea for a user service that people can vote on the trustworthiness of Bitcoiners. Because there are a lot of people who continue to get away with misleading people, like Raoul Pal. Considering that he's good at macroeconomics, he can now tell people over and over to buy meme coins and ETH over Bitcoin and all this crap, that he should be completely discounted as an individual thinker in this space because of his previous I don't even know what to call it, just previous calls, or just the way he is and completely untrustworthy. And yet people continue to trust him because he keeps getting platformed, and he'll have good things to say about macroeconomics that people actually find value in. And therefore, then he sort of gets trusted beyond that scope and into the realm of being able to rug people with these meme coins and such. So we need a way, if we take in some information from somebody, my idea is we go to this platform, we look up that person's name, and we see, okay, well, the plebs have actually said that he's a fairly trustworthy guy. Like I imagine, American Hodl being on there. People think, oh, okay, this dude's actually pretty trustworthy. Yeah, he's had crazy calls about Bitcoin going up, but he's not misleading people about other things and such, right? So, okay, his score is pretty high. Then we look up, this video about that Rupal said is pretty convincing. I'll look him up on this database as well. Oh, okay, the plebs have actually said that he should not be trusted. I think this is something that's incredibly useful right now, because we live in a world where we can get information really fast, right? And authenticity is at such a premium with that information, because we're just getting that information from AI, and we're, you know, we look up the same question. Maybe we Google the question, or Gemini it, or ChatGPT it, a couple different places. How much cross information is there, and how much authenticity is there, right? Like, there's such a premium to human authenticity as information becomes more and more uh, spread out, and trust is just at such a premium. So that's my next idea for Pleb Tools, but it's going to take a while to build that out. If any of you guys are coders, by the way, Pleb Tools is open source. It is on GitHub. You can just look up Pleb Tools. You can contribute. You can fix issues. Yeah, love some help with that. I do have some great help, but it's just me and one other guy coding right now. When is Core going to send us to Hades once and for all? Oh, this is another discussion maybe I should get into here. Yeah, that's just not Signal to me. Yeah, there's definitely discussion to be had here about the problems with Core. I think the sharing of these edited clips, these small out of context clips of Gloria Zhao, are like absolute noise. I think that's about as noisy as this you know, fuzzy unlit green screen that I have right here. Like, that is those you know, those clips that people are sharing that are they think are some sort of signal that Core is corrupt to the bone, when she's talking about her experience getting into Bitcoin. Yeah, there's a lot of trash out there that actually goes against bringing people into the discussion, and actually bringing people in to think critically on issues that may or may not exist, right? A lot of people are saying, you know, since Core 30 is released, the price is down. Maybe some people are selling, you know, Start9 even sold a little bit, right? I think, man, I'm still trying to form my thoughts around this, but I do see a lot of unnecessary character attacks on both sides. So you can talk about a lot of people are just pointing at Gloria Zhao and saying, "Oh, this person doesn't find a big deal with NFTs," or all this stuff. Like, thought that Bitcoin maximalists were scary when she first got into Bitcoin. And then people were pointing at Luke and saying, well, this guy eats cats and he's insane and he's a, you know, hardcore Catholic. Like, just it's just character attacks after character attacks. None of that should matter. None of that should matter. We should think about what is going on with Bitcoin. What are the changes that need to be made? What are the changes that are being acted on too quickly? Are the issues as real as we think they are? Are they not? Let's actually start having discussions on that instead of character attacks. I'm so sick of the character attacks on both sides. Is Bitcoin going down to close the CME gap at 87? I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I don't pay attention that much to CME gaps personally, but maybe. It's probably best to dollar cost average over the next couple of weeks / months. Yeah, dollar cost average is always a good strategy for being unemotional about it. And yeah, I think maybe check out the last video again, the video that I did about fear and greed, which was released on Thursday of last week. Or Friday, I did a call again with Maple Bitcoin where we went over it, where there's sort of this idea about doubling down when we're in these sort of fearful moments where price is depressed, where we can get a little bit more Bitcoin for our dollar cost average. So it's sort of like and I think River, actually, the exchange River, implemented a strategy where if you have a reoccurring buy where it's supercharged, right? So this idea of supercharging your dollar cost average, I think, is a really good idea. Thoughts on taking a B2X loan with Ledin now that Bitcoin price is at 93K? Yeah, again, any loan product, any custodial loan product, you are eliminating the value proposition of having a self custody bearer instrument. So just understand that now the product that you own is less valuable, considering it's in a custodial agreement that is technically still yours, but the private keys are held by somebody else. If you're okay with that and you just wanted to expose yourself to the price of Bitcoin more and arbitrage the difference of Bitcoin's price appreciation compared to the interest rate that it costs, then something like the B2X is a good idea in mathematical sense. I think there is a little bit of I might look into this, because unfortunately here in Canada we don't have the B2X product with Ledn. It's restricted for some reason. I think a lot of the way that Ledn actually makes money is from the sale of Bitcoin to people using this product. And I think there's maybe a higher spread or premium compared to other platforms you could use, where you could essentially build your own B2X product, right? By taking out the loan and then using the cash amount to buy Bitcoin and then adding that Bitcoin as collateral back to your initial loan. Yeah, so maybe look into that, how much, if there's a massive premium on the Bitcoin that they sell. I don't know. That's something that I heard, though. If BlackRock and co are buying and governments are confiscating as much Bitcoin as possible to prevent us from owning it, how will we be able to use it as a currency if so few will be able to own and use it? There's going to be a premium, in my opinion, on Bitcoin in self-custody because it's more useful and you can use it as a peer-to-peer product. In my opinion, we've also made Bitcoin more divisible by having Satoshis, right? We can make it even more divisible than that. And the sort of captive Bitcoin is partially out of circulation from the real Bitcoin economy of the Bitcoin network, which is how people use it for direct peer-to-peer currency. There might be currency layers on top of that move around sort of Bitcoin notes or something like that. People will say that's what Lightning is. That's not what Lightning is. Lightning is real Bitcoin. Sort of there's an account agreement within a multi-sig that ends up going to certain owners if that channel gets closed. And within that channel, while it's open, that Bitcoin is owned by the different participants that are using it. So that is Bitcoin being used in a Lightning network. But yeah, so the thing about Bitcoin is you can use it as a peer-to-peer money. That ability gives it more value. That ability means that as a sovereign individual, you can own Bitcoin in self-custody and you can use it peer-to-peer. That isn't taken away by others not using it in that way. It does make it potentially more scarce if it's just being held and not used in that monetary network. But again, it can be infinitely divisible. At this point, I'm probably just going to stick with cash, Bitcoin, and maybe some physical precious metals. MSTR doesn't really make sense when we are trying to get away from centralization. Fair enough. And this is, part of the thesis of moving away from giving less power to the financial institutes of the world and to centralized power. I think Bitcoin in self-custody is a much more valuable instrument than MSTR shares, since you can, again, own it and transact with it. So I agree with that. I do think MSTR in a dollar price understanding is undervalued right now. It's heavily beaten up. It's heavily disliked at this current moment. And therefore, people have been saying this forever, and it is true since the adoption of Bitcoin on their treasury, that they could see outperformance of Bitcoin. Maybe. Without the last bear market, I would never have the amount of Bitcoin I have today. So yes, price drops are a great opportunity. There we go. There's an example. Awesome. Don't dollar cost average now. It is the beginning of the bear. Calm down. Everything's fine. See you in the beginning of 2027 and stack hard there. Yeah, that just doesn't, it's unnecessary to try to time it that much. It's not going to matter if you buy Bitcoin at 92, 95, 105, 125, 87, 80. It's not going to matter in 5 years. It's about time horizon. Yeah, I would just think about that. It doesn't make sense for MNAV to go below 1 for MSTR. Explain what's going on. Well, it can. I mean, it's been under 1 MNAV before since adopting Bitcoin. And really, it's about the market. It's about market sentiment. MNAV is a market sentiment gauge of believing in Bitcoin, right? So they're amplified. They have leverage. They have debt. They have credit instruments that pay interest that encumber their balance sheet. There's sort of this requirement for them to pay these amounts. So it's not a simple story of every Bitcoin they add is equal to a Bitcoin that you add to your own balance sheet as an individual. It is encumbered by the cost of capital to fund the purchase of that. It is in a structure of a 56, it's crazy, it's only $56 billion market cap now, security that is traded on the NASDAQ, right? So it is much more capable, or the market is much more capable of manipulating the price of a $56 million asset than a $2+ trillion asset. So if people want, like, if enough institutions wanted the MNAV to be lower, they could potentially continue to push it down. And really, it's a waiting game, because the MNAV wants to be above that, considering that they're acquiring more Bitcoin and adding more Bitcoin to their balance sheet. Even if that is encumbered by the cost of capital, it is still adding to that amount and pushing that floor price up, that MNAV up. This is what I've been saying since the beginning here, is understanding that yes, MNAV can go higher based on sentiment and hype and Bitcoin's price and people thinking that MSTR is a leverage play of Bitcoin and beta to Bitcoin. But MNAV can also go higher because the floor NAV, the net asset value, the amount of Bitcoin, is going higher, right? So these two things can happen simultaneously. They can happen different prices, different things within the market. But essentially now with the preferred instruments, MSTR can use opportunities like now where the price is down, or where the price goes down even further, right? If they have a bear market, that might, in the long term, as much as it's the same case for the individual, where it ends up being a blessing in 5, 10, 20 years, that a bear market might be a blessing, just as, Clang here said, that was a big blessing, having that bear market and being able to have the amount of Bitcoin that they have today. That might be the same case for MSTR. Yes, the shareholders would get hurt in the short term, but the amount of Bitcoin they could stack could be higher, because as we're seeing now, the main instrument that they are using to buy Bitcoin is not MSTR common stock. The common stock is just being used to service the dividend payments to the main instrument that buys Bitcoin now for them, which is the issuance of these preferreds. And these preferreds continue to stay valuable in a bear market, considering they have higher claim, considering they have dividend payments and such. So in a bear market, their ability to stack up more Bitcoin becomes higher and higher. 1 second here. Yeah, so it's possible in a bear market that MSTR is able to stack an incredible amount of Bitcoin. And yeah, even if they're below 1 MNAV. All right, so what's up? I'm watching from the start. Nice to see you, Naughty Vlogs. It's always good to see you here. Is a drop in to a 60K Bitcoin worth seriously selling property and other assets to buy? I'll just say what I'm doing. I would consider selling anything possible that I had if Bitcoin went back to 60K. But it's up to you. That could mean a reduction in your quality of life if you're selling certain things. Sometimes stuff like that isn't worth it, right? It's sometimes it's adding more stress if you're taking on debt and leverage to do these things. Yeah, it's really just dependent on yourself, and it's not really for me to answer just generally here in a live stream. I can really just say what I would do, which is yes, I would try to stack as much as I can, which is what I did during those times. But the entire time I was worried, am I buying as it's going up? Am I buying as it's going up? And I was, but it went more than double that. Yes, the market cap of the company is less than the market cap of Bitcoin it holds. So this is in relation to MSTR, but the enterprise value is actually what we should be measuring MNAV off of, which is the market cap plus debt and other additional equity, which is all the preferreds are part of that as well. So that's the better way to calculate MNAV, in my opinion. What if Satoshi is upset about how companies and countries are eating up Bitcoin and not the middle class? He could sell his coins to crash the market. Yeah, that's a big what if. I don't think Satoshi has control of his coins anymore. I think he basically bootstrapped the network by taking a million coins off the market. Who says 21 was the amount of coins that he actually wanted? Maybe it was 20. And yeah, I think it's been known since the beginning that this is a possibility, and that this is actually, in all likelihoods, the road to mass adoption goes through all aspects of the world, and the financial industry currently is a major part of the world and funds all other industry. So yeah, they're going to adopt Bitcoin. They have no ability to not do so. I have 2 daughters, university found in Bitcoin. Nice. That's awesome. 1 million Bitcoin is nothing these days. Someone will eat it fast. That's another point. I wouldn't say it's nothing, right? Obviously, the market would, depending on how that's being released. We've seen large amounts of Bitcoin being released, and it's getting eaten up. It's getting rebought by other buyers, but it's not happening all at once, right? Like the market is built by the last seller and buyer, right? The market, the price is built on the margin, right? If all of a sudden 1 million hit market price, right, that would, until all the buyers came in and started supporting the buys, right? So it's really about the it's really just about how quickly, and how it would hit the market and everything like that. You have to factor in risk-adjusted return and volatility. Even if Bitcoin's ARR is 5% higher than gold due to volatility, gold is better investment. Bitcoin needs to have close to double the ARR. I disagree with this because there's additional risk with gold. Literally, the adoption of Bitcoin as a store of value is a risk to the store of value function of gold, right? So 45% roughly, so there's other metrics out there, but just say it's around 45 or 50% or something like that of gold use is for industrial and jewelry. The other is store of value. If that store of value function starts to erode, then 50% of the value could be eroded out of it. And then that's, again, these numbers are very general, but that's a risk that I think people are not seeing with gold. But there's historical precedents for this, right? There's silver. Silver used to have an artificial government peg to gold, 16 to 1 or something like that it was, I believe. And silver basically got demonetized, and all the silver bugs out there that think it should trade higher and that the relation to gold is off and all of this don't understand that silver is not a monetary metal anymore, and that it's an industrial metal, and the monetary premium on it is very low, and that's why it collapsed compared to priced in gold. Who says the same thing can't happen to gold, right? Bitcoin is a better store of value. It is easier to custody, it is easier to secure, it is easier to transact, it is more finite. Well, it is actually finite, whereas gold is not, and it's accountable, more easily accountable. It has the properties of money, the properties of a store of value better than gold. So how do you adjust for the risk of gold being demonetized? Now that might sound crazy because people have seen this massive rush in gold, and they're saying, well, it's partially retail, but it's partially banks buying it for that store of value function. What happens when they decide to sell it and they feel like they either don't need a store of value function or they found a better store of value? Opinion on enabling opcat. I don't know too much about this. This is for uh, being able to have covenants. There's also CTV or something like that as well. That's a blind spot in my knowledge of Bitcoin and Bitcoin improvement protocols, or sorry, proposals. Don't know too much about it. If you have any information about that, actually, like maybe some videos or podcasts talking about what they would do, I'd be curious to listen, because I also believe things like this, like could potentially be even more important than sort of the aspects of the soft forks and policy changes and things that are happening right now. Scaling solutions for Bitcoin could be uh, potentially more important than reducing other things. Maybe. But again, I don't really know that much about it. So that's something I would have to learn about. Nick says Satoshi is most likely dead. But even if he wasn't, sorry, I should say unalived. We'll get dinged on YouTube for saying the word dead for some reason. But even if he wasn't, those coins wouldn't come close to crashing the market. BlackRock and MST are coming close to that. Yeah, that's true. They are coming close to that amount. And it should be a reminder for everybody, because too many people don't know this, but BlackRock doesn't own the Bitcoin. I mean, they own the private keys to that Bitcoin, or they have the custodial set up for that Bitcoin, but they own a vehicle that people buy Bitcoin through them with, right? They own IBIT, which is a spot buyer of Bitcoin, but IBIT is not owned by BlackRock. It's owned by people, and BlackRock is selling that instrument to people. So BlackRock does not own 800,000 Bitcoin as a corporation. They own it on behalf of their clients. 7 million Bitcoin in 2025 moved. Yeah, which is incredible, right? People completely underestimate. They underestimate two things. They underestimate how important liquidity is in a market, and how liquidity draws in more liquidity. Part of the reason why the bond market is so large is because it's so liquid. The other thing they underestimate is how liquid Bitcoin is. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Satoshi is a legend. I mean, it's incredible that he walked away from this project. It's amazing. Good morning. Good morning to you, Kyle. Hal Finney was Satoshi and now he's dead. Move on. Maybe. I don't really care who Satoshi was. I just know that he was a legend. He's a bloody legend, mate. Have you done research on the dangers of quantum computing on Bitcoin and securing in cold storage? As far as my understanding of quantum, if you move your Bitcoin to an address that you haven't used out of, this is one of the many problems of, say, Tangem, which only has one receiving and sending address. If you move your Bitcoin, which all wallets should just do this naturally, where you send Bitcoin and you have a receiving address, or sorry, you have a change address that's different, that it protects you from the main threat of quantum, which is private public key, the public private key cryptography being broken. I believe it's the elliptical curve. If that's broken, then the public keys that are out there could be reverse engineered to derive the private key from it. So addresses that are pay to public key, which is an old signature wallet address, are under threat of this. So there's, I don't know, I don't know the numbers, maybe 2 million, something like that, addresses or Bitcoin, something like that are under threat, as far as my understanding. If you have a SegWit address, you're spending your Bitcoin, but it's coming back to a different address. You're not reusing addresses. This basically protects you from this threat. So in my opinion, the quantum threat is overblown in many ways. One of them is that most wallet addresses are going to be protected by this anyway, as far as I understand. The other thing here is that quantum is being hyped more than say any Elon Musk project that he hypes, right? Where he says it's coming next year, it's coming next year. 5-10 years later, maybe some semblance of a degree of what he promised is realized. This is the case for quantum because the people hyping it are either part of investors or major investors in quantum companies, quantum tokens and coins that are trying to build up that fear so people think that it's more than it is and go invest in either the companies or coins associated with quantum. If you really felt the need to have a privacy coin, Monero is the only thing I would consider. Monero simply exists as it is. There's very few people trying to pump it or promote it. Yeah. Monero is I don't hate on Monero heads out there. I think that it just exists, as you said. It just exists. There's marketplaces where it can be used online. My understanding is that to be really private with it, you also need to be running your own node. You need to be pretty privacy concerned in general to be really using it in a very private way, which is the same for Bitcoin, using it in a private way too. Having CoinJoin is just part of your acceptance of Bitcoin. Maybe using layer 2s, these kind of things. I think it currently seems to have its place within people that are really private orientated. But I think that probably just gets phased out and implemented into layer 2s of Bitcoin. Just my sense of the things. Bitcoin hasn't kept up with inflation since 2025, almost 5 years. If it's only going to grow 25% a year max from here, then better off trading 10% swings. Sure, you could do that if you wanted. In my opinion, if those numbers are true, then it's completely undervalued and underpriced, which just means that it's going to go higher. Are you dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin or MSTR now? MSTR is cheap, in my opinion. Thoughts? I sell covered calls on MSTR, and I use the premium from that to buy more MSTR. I buy Bitcoin with any extra income I have, which isn't much right now. I have quite a few expenses. I'm actually moving. It's maybe hard for you to believe, but I don't actually live here in this Clanker image that I generated. So some heavy expenses coming up. So I don't have a lot extra to dollar cost average right now. But when and if I do, it goes into Bitcoin self-custody directly. My MSTR position is larger than it's actually larger than I like, but it's sort of a process for me to continue to build it just with the reinvestment from my covered call premiums. MSTR going to 100. I hope so. I like the idea of Trustpilot style platforms or so-called Bitcoin. Yeah, let's go. Okay, we're gonna kind of go through a little bit. We're at an hour here, so I'm just kind of gonna go through some of these. Some experts like Gladiator give massively different advice to you. Well, his model is broken. If MSTR goes up, or if Bitcoin goes up 2x, MSTR goes up 4x, his model is broken. Gonna just check the Coinos. Oh, here we go. 1,000 sats. We got a message with it. Happy Monday, Bitcoin on sale. Square adding Bitcoin payments and BTC map being updated. Awesome. Yeah, I've been checking out BTC map. It's hard for me to figure out if they're actually adding all the Bitcoin merchants from Cash App. Unfortunately, as a Canadian, I don't have Cash App, so I can't look at the Cash App app. So cool to see that people are doing that. And a couple of comments from on Zapstream. Trust the Trumps by Errant. Wait, so Doink coin isn't the next Bitcoin? No, it is not. Love that. All right, so I'm just going to blaze through these and then throw a couple coins in the wishing well. Strategy is the next crisis. Nope, not true. They are not that leveraged. If you look at them, you're just being sold a lie, or you're completely uneducated. In a bear market, switch to the preferred stock. Maybe, but in a bear market, that's when the buying opportunities are going to be for leaps, I would say, or common. You don't want to be in it. You don't want to be in the common before a bear market, right? But these things are hard to time. Just going to, sorry, there's a lot of comments here. I gotta skip them, unfortunately. We're already at an hour. Great, I will do this. I'll actually copy that right now. And Ethan Heelman. Okay, appreciate it. Why do people say BlackRock is one of the most powerful companies in the world when it's just people buying shares using their platform? Because it's buying shares in companies with voting rights, so they have the ability to mandate things like ESG, and they have the control of being able to be heavily influential in boards by having the voting rights. That's part of it. They're supposed to just vote with sort of the party lines, but that's a lot of power, right? If you have any, you have a lot of influence. Sorry, I'm just reading through all these. We're almost here. Yeah, not much leverage. It's true, actually. Let's take a look. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at their leverage. Their leverage is not much, John. 14% to their Bitcoin holdings. That's incredibly low leverage when you're thinking about their ability as a company and corporation to acquire leverage, acquire debt much easier than an individual. Yeah. All right. That's about it. We're gonna toss a couple coins in the wishing well here. I'm just going to bring up Bitcoin Well. If you guys want to support the show, you can check out the links in the description. Book a one-on-one session with me if your answer was missed, or if you have private questions you want to ask me, you can do that. Discount links to Stampseed, Bitcoin Well, all sorts of amazing Bitcoin-only products that every Bitcoiner needs are all linked in the description. If you're the first person to scan this QR code that's about to pop up on the page here in the middle, you will win 484 sats. Incredible. We're going to do one more. This is going to be a quick one. Again, I got to go here. And thanks for everybody on Zapstream tuning in. I love that. 419 sats. Thanks everybody tuning in on YouTube. It's been a hell of a stream, actually. Lots of questions that went unanswered. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and see you guys on the next one.